The Passionate Leader, because leadership without passion is just a title.
Meeting. We got a collapse in the garage. Get the spot back equipment in here. We got an I-beam calling to a firefighter.
Get that island urgent. Transmit a second along.
This is where titles end and leadership begins.
Ask yourself, what are you teaching people to tolerate? We talk a lot about culture in the fire service. We talk about protecting it. We talk about changing it. We blame the new generation for ruining it. We blame the old generation for refusing to let it evolve. But maybe we're asking the wrong question, because culture isn't what your mission statement says. It isn't what's written on the wall, and it sure as hell isn't what the chief says during the annual meeting. Culture is what your organization tolerates, rewards, and worse, repeats. So ask yourself, what are you teaching your people to tolerate? When the high performer gets away with being an asshole because they're good at their job, what did you just teach the rest of the organization? When that officer who develops people gets overlooked while the loudest voice in the room keeps getting promoted, what behavior did you just reward? When you complain about poor leadership but continue promoting people without actually preparing them to lead, what cycle are we choosing to repeat? And maybe the hardest one, how much of that culture we complain about are we actively reinforcing every single day? Our guest today has spent more than 20 years helping organizations answer these questions, and exactly these questions. Dedra Thompson is a leader and talent strategist who has worked across retail, hospitality, healthcare, real estate, and professional services, helping organizations develop leaders, build succession plans, improve performance, and turn leadership philosophy into something people actually experience every day. And I think there's something incredibly valuable about bringing that perspective into the fire service, hence why she's here on the show today. Because sometimes we spend so much time inside our own culture that we've stopped questioning whether the way we've always done things is actually the right way we should be doing it. So today, we're going outside the firehouse to take a look inside. We're going to talk leadership, we're going to talk accountability, and we're going to talk succession plan, oh my gosh, development, and people and developing the people behind us. And we're going to talk about the uncomfortable gap between the culture organizations say they want and the behaviors they're actually willing to tolerate. So before we get there, ask yourself, if someone watched what your organization tolerates, rewards, and repeats without ever reading your mission statement, what would they say your culture actually values? Let's get to it with our conversation today with Dedra Thompson.
Wow, that was a really fantastic intro. Just what you were saying, I was just sitting here shaking my head going, yes. It was fantastic.
I think what's so fun about, like we said before we hit the record button, is how much leadership, no matter what industry, what realm, what genre is, whatever we want to boil it down to, we all face the same problems. And I think, bringing us back full circle into the mission behind the Passionate Leader platform is to start talking about, leadership things. We do a fair talk about, mental health and wellness and things. And that is very important. But I think, our original mission was to kind of circle things into the leadership aspect. So again, welcome to the Passionate Leader. I really appreciate you joining us today. I love the stuff that I've seen through social media. It's really, really fun. What I love is, when I can scroll, doom scroll and something stops me dead in my tracks. And I'm like, oh, that tickles the brain waves so nicely. And it scratches an itch I didn't know that I had. So again, welcome. If you want to give, kind of the listeners and the viewers a brief overview of who you are, what you do, how you got into the business of helping leaders and everything like that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was so excited when you reached out to me to be on your podcast. So I started my career, and this usually gets a chuckle out of people, but I started my career in the late 1900s, and it was. I'm graduated from the University of Georgia and entered the workforce, and I kind of fell into learning and organizational development. But once I got into learning and organizational development, I learned that my passion was developing people and developing leaders. And I think I found that, and I have found throughout my career, and I think that's why at my age now and where I am in my career, I'm so passionate about it.
Mm.
Have a surplus of really bad leaders out there.
Yes.
And we have a surplus of misperceptions. And so I've kind of made it my one woman mission to eradicate the world of bad leaders, one leader at a time. It's a pretty lofty goal, and I don't know that I'll ever fulfill it, but that's where my passion lies, is helping people be better leaders and giving people better leaders, because so many of us, so I was actually in the corporate world for decades, and
Mhm.
earlier this year I actually stepped out and I've started consulting. I recognize I recognize that not everybody has that luxury. Most people need a job. And if you have a
Mm.
job, you have a boss. And
Yes. Yep.
you're you talk about mental health, but your mental and physical health so much relies on your boss, because we
Mm.
take it home with us. And research has shown that if you have a crappy boss, that impacts all aspects of your life. So I think that's part of the reason I'm so passionate about trying to help people be better leaders, but that also gives people better leaders.
That's good. I what kind of led to the, so obviously you stepped away to kind of get into it. What if we can, and if there are areas where we need to, then we can certainly we can plow through it while we record, and then maybe if there's a no zone. I very seldom ask that question at the very beginning. So what was kind of the reason that was like, what, I'm done. It was your shining moment of clarity where it's like, all right, I have a bigger mission than just being the step, in the ladder type thing, and being trounced all over.
Sure. And maybe we ought to develop a safe word, JP. I'm just so I think multiple reasons. One, my husband and I wanted a little more freedom of our schedules, and,
Mm,
and being a consultant gives us that. And but to your point, I felt like I had a bigger mission. I feel
mm,
like, and gosh, I wish I could remember the name of the book, but there's a book out there and it talks about you reach a point in your career that instead of doing, you turn around and you teach. You
mm,
you impart the wisdom and knowledge that you've gathered over the years, you impart it on others. You give other people what you've gathered over the years. And I just felt like I was at that season in life where it was time to do that. And very candidly, I was head of learning and organizational development at a not a huge company, but a very profitable company here in the Atlanta area. And as part of the learning and development function, I was responsible for things like annual compliance training, and I just got tired of doing that.
mm.
My passion was developing leaders, not like pushing compliance and things like that at people. So I was like,
Sure.
it's just time. It's like all these stars aligned, and I just said, okay, it's time.
I love it. And I don't want to go to, we talk a lot about it on most of the episodes because, it's also an introduction of myself to the guest, but that's kind of what really did it for me too, was, you work underneath a boss who really suppressed you. And I bring it back to, I was referred to one time as a peon lieutenant, which a lieutenant is I, I don't know if you want to call it middle management, because but it's kind of, between the men on the floor and the top of the fire food chain. And, I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? And it was something, it was said out of anger, at the moment in time, because that's something that I had done. I reached out to a totally different agency, but I had realized it was one that we work with a lot. And I realized they had an employee that wasn't doing a very good job. And it was one of those, I reached out to their middle manager, and it was no different than me having hey, Dedra, one of your employees, I've noticed this, just, because in the fire service, the more you can keep out of the chief's office, the better, right? And anywhere in general, handle it in the little bites versus before this thing becomes a damn elephant. And now you're trying to chew an elephant up, one solid bite, um, and it ended up, it was mishandled on the receiving end of where I gave it. They ended up pushing it up to their top dog, and then their top dog calls mine, and it ended up being, words were said out of anger. But I'm also, and apologies were given as much as I could have gotten for an apology from certain people. But the way I look at it is, it's sort of like, how's the phrase go? A drunk mind speaks sober thoughts. It's very much so.
Yeah.
An angry mind speaks calm thoughts, in my honest opinion. I'm like, all right, so this is where this individual really feels that I apparently, right in the world. And things just it started to kind of snowball from there. And that was where I launched the Passionate Leader Facebook page. And I had it for years, probably a couple of years, 2-3 years. I really didn't do much with it. I'd sprinkle things here and there. I didn't, nowhere near as, into it as I am now. And then things just started to snowball more at the office. And I'm like, no, it became where I knew that I had a voice that needed to be heard, and a voice that I could give. Also, I'm hoping to empower people to have their own voice in their own agencies, because self-advocacy is enormous in all aspects of life, let alone the workforce. And that's kind of where it ended for me. And that's huge. One thing that you hit that I've never heard of it before, and it's so true, is the surplus of bad leaders. How do we get to that point where we have so many bad leaders?
Okay, yeah, not much stumps me, JP, but you did just stump me, and I'm like, okay, I need to have a very intelligent, logical answer while we have
No,
bad leaders, and I don't know that I have a great answer. I can tell you that from my experience, it rolls downhill.
Mm.
You have one poor leader at the top, or you have one poor leader that's near the top, it rolls downhill. The pressures that are put on people. Also, when I think about, I worked for an organization once where the person at the very top of the pile spoke down to people, especially women, had opinions, would completely discount experts in a room full of people. That became pervasive behavior. People felt like, well, if he talks to people like that, then it's probably okay for me to talk to people like that. And I think we also, I've heard, and you've probably heard this, you become like the 5 people you spend most of your time with. And I think you become like the leaders that have led you.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I think people often feel like, well, if this leader is acting like this and they've gotten to where they've gotten, maybe I should act like that too.
Mm.
And maybe I could have grown my career even more had I taken on some of those behaviors, but I also had to lay my head down at night to be okay with things that I've done and said during the day.
And we all step on our own anatomy sometimes. It is not impossible to do, right? So I think where I've seen in the fire service is it's the learned behavior. Like you said, it all trickles down. So we have learned that, this is how that person lets, this must be how you have to lead people. And it really takes people to finally, again, stand up against it, fight back, and be like, no, that's not how we should be treating our people, how we want to be treated. It's not how I want to be treated. So I'm not going to want to treat somebody that way, because I want that, reciprocated properly back at me. So yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, by no means are any questions really intended to stump. There's it's crazy that it's fun to see the different sides of leadership, and where things go wrong and things go south. And so with taking the big step, I mean, how have things kind of been working for you with that big leap from going from being an employee to the employer?
It has been really good. It's interesting because what I'm finding, perfect example. I had someone reach out just late this afternoon and ask if actually a former colleague, and asked if I could put together a 2 to 3 day workshop for their middle managers. And he laid out some of the stuff that he wanted in this workshop. And I know the company that he works for, and it's a large company, and they have an in-house HR and learning team.
Hmm.
And my first thought was, it's interesting that he's not reaching out to his own learning team. But
Yeah.
then I also feel like learning teams are stretched so thin. HR teams are stretched so thin. They're focusing on compliance and things that aren't addressing the needs of leadership. So, kind of long story to say, as you say, how's it going being out on my own? It's actually going really well, because what I'm finding is organizations aren't investing in leaders
Mm.
as much as they used to. And so having someone like me who can come in and help you put together a training or lead a workshop or develop a program for your organization, there's a big need for it right now.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring up organizations that we do it in the fire service. So we do a lot to teach you how to be a firefighter. That's basically it. We don't really do a whole ton to teach you how to be a leader. There are a plethora of leadership platforms, and I think it really boils down to different methodologies work for different people, and that's just how it works, and hence why we bring different subject matter experts onto the show, because my perspective is going to resonate with some. It's not going to resonate with others, and with any luck, where I don't resonate, hopefully you can, and vice versa. So and that's what it's all about. So where from your experience, where have you sort of seen, is it just a financial thing as to why companies don't want to invest in their people, or is it they just feel that they don't need to?
I think it's a few things. I think they see the need. I think that a lot of times it's finances. I think a lot of HR departments and even learning and development departments are so focused on, and unfortunately
Hang
a
on one
lot.
second. My dog's upstairs barking. Hang on
Yeah.
just a second.
All right. So I would, it seems that, and from my experience working in HR and learning and development, those folks are so busy training on policies and holding people accountable and pushing out performance reviews, that a lot of times that leadership development training gets pushed to the back burner,
Mm,
because there are compliance things and things that are needed to run the business that take up their time. And so, and also there's financial constraints for having someone on staff who that is all they do. So I
yeah.
think it's easier at times to bring in someone like a me to put together a 2 or 3 day workshop once or twice a year than having someone on staff to do it.
Which it makes complete
Yeah.
sense. I think where I look at it from, I'm a firm advocate of, developing talent from within if you can.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes we do have to farm out talent or hire out a house if that kind of requires it. So, we kind of take that aspect with, weigh the good with the bad, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um and it makes sense. And it's sort of, it almost kind of goes along with the concept of, instead of hiring more staff to fill in staffing needs, they'll just pay the overtime for people to work more, which
Uh-huh.
for me, sometimes it's kind of nice. I don't mind a little extra OT in the paycheck, but other times it's like, man, if there was just another shift that could take over where I ended, it would save me from the annoying hour here, hour there, whatever those cases are. So I love it. So where, totally different subject, and this is just random things that happen to pop into my scatterbrain. Where are companies and leaders missing the mark the most nowadays?
Mm. I I would have to say a few different areas, and the one that comes to my mind first and foremost really fast is having hard conversations.
Mm,
Actually, my partner and I just released it's a 40-page guide, and it's called "Say the Hard Thing," and it's all about having those hard conversations. And I think that throughout my career, that has been the one thing that I've seen leaders struggle with, because for a few different reasons. They don't know how to react when someone gets emotional,
Mm.
and that kind of freaks them out. They don't know they're making a mountain out of a molehill, and they don't want to be wrong about that. Maybe, and this resonated in your intro, maybe it's that jerk, but that's a high performer, and they don't want to upset them because they don't want to lose them. So there's a myriad of reasons why leaders aren't having those hard conversations. But I think that is probably the biggest area that people are missing the mark.
Yeah, yeah. Which is in again, does it boil down to we're just not taught adequately in our positions?
I think it's we're not taught adequately as children how to resolve conflict
Oh,
in a
yes.
healthy way. I mean,
Okay.
I I I adored my grandmother. She lived with us, but her answer to conflict was, "Well, if little Susie is being mean to you at
Mm,
school, just avoid her." And so I
yes.
grew up as an adult where just avoid them. And as a leader, I've
Ooh,
had to learn, oh, wait, I can't just avoid somebody. I have
that.
to, I have
Mm,
to learn how to handle this. And so I think, I'm sure there are people, and there may be people that are listening to this that have been taught conflict resolution from a very young age. And maybe it's my generation. I'm in my 50s. I was not taught conflict resolution as a kid. And so many people that I know were not taught conflict resolution as a kid. So
you're the big word that you hit that resonated with me was avoid. And it is abundantly clear that that has been the social norm or was the social norm for a while
mhm,
because there are, the avoidance leads to so many different things, um, more specifically, people do not have the hard conversations that are part of conflict resolution. And sometimes hard conversations, they're harder in your mind than they actually are in reality. So,
you hit the nail on the head with that one. Yes. We build it up in our head and we get so worked up that
yeah.
our own mind freaks us out more than the conversation should.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. No, for damn sure. And I think sometimes it's really it's difficult too because so I used to avoid conflict all the time, confrontation, sometimes even just conversation, just for whatever the case is. And as we develop, and I try to have hard conversations, and they're not even really hard conversations with people that I don't know, but through social media and stuff. Like I'll bring something up, and people just they don't have the ability to have that, so they either resort to name calling or I hate to use the word put down, but it's the biggest equation. It's like a sixth grade playground stuff. It's a put down. Um, and they because they don't have the ability to work with that. And through a lot of this, I've learned of this really neat thing. What was it? Psychological reactance,
Mhm.
and that it boils down to people's inability. If they feel attacked, they feel threatened, and if they feel threatened, they have to do something so that they no longer feel threatened. And what action that is based upon their cognitive abilities, whether it is they avoid or they confront or they can have a moment of why does that why does me saying that upset me, or why does what JP posted make me upset.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a firm believer of if something feels like a personal attack, don't go at them. Stop blaming the mirror. Look, blame the reflection, not the mirror. It's not the mirror that's causing the reflection. So and it all goes back to that. We were, like you said, we were taught to avoid. Don't have that. And it's like, man, especially in our line of work in the fire service, it's tough because you have to have these hard conversations. And sometimes the biggest question that needs to be asked is, well, have you just talked to the person? Because it might not be as bad as you think.
And I think sometimes we make assumptions about people or why they did something. I know as a leader, there have been times that people who work for me, you're like, why did they do that? Oh my gosh. And you start making up all these stories in your head and you
Mm.
start telling yourself these stories. But if you ask the question, why did you do that? It may be as simple as, well, you didn't tell me not to, or I didn't know better. But all of a sudden we make assumptions like you brought up. Have you talked to the person? Sometimes we make up stories about someone's motive
Yeah.
and that and we go to worst case scenario typically. And I think
Right.
that's of human nature because it must have been a slight against me. They must have been trying to sabotage this. They must have had nefarious um, reasons behind why they did what they did, but it may be something very innocent, actually.
Oh, very, very much. And there's also, I forget where I heard at one time that um, the only person that cares about us as much as we believe others do is ourselves. Nobody, they don't have time to care that much about you.
Right,
And
right.
I can tell you, have things from this platform been inspired by lived experiences? Yep. By seen experiences? Yep. Um, More so, it's actually by people being like, "Hey, this happened to me." And like, that's not right. Let's talk about that. Let's unpack that a little bit. Through a video or whatever the case is. So, man, that's kind of the thing that just sort of just blows my mind that people would actually kind of do that. So it's great. Now, to the conflict resolution or even having hard conversations, what are some recommendations that you have or some skills that you've seen that actually have helped benefit people have and initiate those hard conversations?
Yeah, so probably the biggest one, and I'm kind of giving away my secret sauce here to the new guide, but it's a framework and it keeps the emotion out of it,
Hmm.
and it's the letters SBIE. So situation, behavior, impact, expectation. So when you're getting ready to sit down with somebody, if you can write out the situation being when it happened.
Mm.
Behavior is what led us to have this conversation. What did this person do that is leading to this conversation? The I is impact. What impact is this having on the team, on the business, on people around you, on the customer, whomever it may be? And then expectation. What is the expectation moving forward? And if
Mm.
a leader can write that out, that takes out the emotion, that takes out, and you stick to that as your script, that will get you through so many situations. And what I have found, it actually is not just having hard conversations, that framework, that SBIE. If you're having a coaching conversation, if you're
Mm.
wanting to someone, if you're wanting someone to course correct, but it doesn't have to be a hard, contentious conversation.
Sure, sure.
Use SBIE, situation, behavior, impact, and expectation. And that has probably been the thing, the most valuable framework that I have taught people.
Ooh, that's good stuff. It really kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It just, and I think sometimes I will 100% lean into the fact that for somebody who has a 2-letter first name, which is an acronym for a name, I generally don't follow in the fire service. We live in acronym world because that's how we are monkeys and we need to kind of, simplify things. But I do like when things are spelt out in a step,
Uh-huh.
um, and things like that. So, and it's tough, so one thing that I've found, and I'm not sure, if you've had any experience with this, is when I have to have a hard conversation with somebody, I almost start the conversation backwards. Like, this is how I expect us to walk out of this room today. Whether it's like, hey, I don't expect this to end today, you know, being best friends or, having a full understanding and agreement with things, but I do expect us to be able to work together, moving forward, with
Yeah.
this. And then we kind of work our way and unpack the layers of the onion with what the problem is. But sometimes it is, again, it's the initiation of this hard conversation. I'd be willing to bet there's probably a stat out there somewhere that somebody's got to have that's, of all the quote hard conversations, they probably weren't as hard as your own, your mind's eye is kind of making it seem like it's a lot worse. It
Right.
is kind of where I sit.
Yeah. And we make it worse in our own head. And because there's another human involved, there's probably going to be some emotion involved. And so it does, and humans are messy. People are messy.
Yeah.
And so sitting down to have a conversation, it can be very uncomfortable. But yes. And one of the things that I often tell leaders, and this actually goes like many, many steps before you have to have a hard conversation. If you're not building trust with your team, and if your team doesn't care about them, those hard conversations are going to be even more hard. I have had to have, I've had leaders my leaders that have had hard conversations with me, and I've had to have hard conversations with people that work for me. When I was sitting in the seat and I was the one that I was the recipient of that hard conversation, it landed very differently if I knew that leader truly cared about me. I've had a hard conversation with a leader that I knew for a fact did not care about me, and that conversation did not go well. It hit harder for me as the recipient because I felt like it was an attack on me. But for that one leader that I knew that they truly cared about me, I felt like that conversation was more of a, Dedra, you're screwing up and I care about you and I don't want to see you screw up anymore. So here it is.
Yeah.
They say that, but that's the way it felt to me. So as leaders, if you're not building trust and you're not showing your team that you truly care about them as people, those hard conversations, they're going to be that much more tough.
Yeah. Very, very true. Excuse me, that how can leaders, because there's a how can leaders ensure that they are actually showing their employees that that they do care for them?
So, and this may be controversial, we hear a lot about empathy, and I love empathy, and I'm a very empathetic person, but I also tell leaders that empathy alone is a crutch.
Oh, okay.
I know you're like, whoa, clutch my pearls.
I like, yes, please, tickles. I like that.
You need empathy and curiosity. So as a leader, if I'm only empathetic with my team, they start understanding that that's almost a weak spot for me. I also need to be curious with my team. So you ask, how do you build trust? How do you let your team know that you care about them? It's asking, as simple as asking how their day is, asking what challenges they're having. When I used to have one-on-ones with members of my team, and I had one-on-ones every week, if not every other week, if not every week. And one of the questions I would always ask them, or some of the questions I would always ask them were, what roadblocks do you need me to remove for you? What's standing in your way? What do you need from me that you're not getting right now? And I would always ask them, what's taking up space that is challenge, that's making work challenging for you right now.
Yeah.
And we live in Metro Atlanta, so sometimes they were like, it's traffic. And I'm like, okay, what do we do? How can we fix that for you?
Yeah,
but I always
sure.
I always wanted, one of the ways I showed people, my team, that I cared about them, I wanted talking to me to be safe. I wanted them to feel like they could complain about me to me if that's what they needed to do. They could vent about how frustrated they were with what was going on in the organization. And I would often ask, and the first time I asked this for one of them, they just kind of stopped. They were venting, and I said, do you need me to listen or do you need me to fix?
Okay.
And I said, because I'm a mama bear and I will jump in and I will fix. But if you want to fix this, but you want to brainstorm some ideas on how to fix it, I'm here for you too.
Mm.
And so just creating that safe space, letting people know how much I care about them, but also, I also held my team to high standards.
Yeah. Yep.
And they knew that that was because one of the things I always told them, I'm holding you to high standards because I care about you and I want you to look like a rock star. I want you to get accolades because of the standards that we're maintaining as a team. So there's so many ways that you show your team that you care about them.
Mm.
Um, and we often think that it's just showing empathy and being an empathetic leader, but it can't just be empathy alone. That's not going to get the job done.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I love the tie-in with curiosity. And one thing that you also hit too was, feel safe to talk to. That I think that's the new age real and factual concept of the my door's always opened.
Right.
I'm not sure if you've ever experienced it, but I know there are a ton of leaders out there that have this open door policy, but it's as good as bolted shut. Whether their open door policy was the in a physical sense, not in a hey, do you have a second? Wherever the case is, and that I think, but to have that a genuine curiosity of how you can help and the what I love is the empowerment that you give your employees, right? Do you need me to fix this or do you need a shoulder and somebody to lean on? And um with those experiences, did you find did it favor one way or the other, as far as people being like, no, I need you to fix this versus some that maybe felt more empowered to try to fix it themselves?
I think it depended on the situation.
Okay.
There were, and it depended on who I was talking to, which of my team members I was talking to, and there were certain situations where they didn't feel comfortable handling something. Maybe it was the person on the other end that needed that they were running into a roadblock. Maybe it was one of our executives, and they were like, "I am not in a position to go talk to this executive," and I had no problem talking to that executive. Sometimes I had one employee in particular who would say, "I really want to handle this, but I've never handled something like this. Can we talk through how I should handle it?" Absolutely, we can. And so
Yeah.
talk through it. And sorry, sort of different line.
No.
You said
Yeah.
something a second ago that really, you said something about people having open doors. And I've often said there's way too many leaders that have open doors but closed minds.
Oh, I'm gonna bookmark that right there.
So
That was
so
a
they're
good
like,
little-
come on in, sit down, talk, tell me what's on your mind. And you tell them like, no, I don't want to hear that. So open door, open mind, or open door and closed mind.
Fair, spot on. And it tying it into the mental health and wellness aspect, there are a lot of leaders who pay nothing but lip service. We're here for you. If you need anything, here's our EAP or blah blah blah. If you're having a tough day, you always have my number. But the real truth is they are praying to whatever they believe in that nobody ever calls because it is. I wish I'll give credit to Rich Creamer and the Responder Reset podcast. He said it best. I'm paraphrasing it because he said it so good. I actually had to listen to it 3 different times. I kept rewinding it and listening to it to the effect that we always want to be there for somebody until it's in our own house. And then it's never convenient when it's our problem. And it's huge, in that's but and it go take the mental wellness part out of it. It's leaders can say, hey, I want to be here to help you. I want to be here to see you succeed. And then all of a sudden when that, the employee or their subordinate's like, hey, what can I do? And oh my gosh, I love that. I love that concept. That's insane. That is that's good. So we kind of talked about where leaders are missing the mark. So how, because we were going with this, where are leaders actually, starting to hit the mark in the world nowadays?
A few things that I've seen leaders doing really well. I do think that I feel like leaders are getting better at, even though I just said you shouldn't lean into it too much, empathy and emotional
Mm,
intelligence. Uh,
yes. Yeah, I get
it
you.
it there's still a ways to go, but I do feel like there's much more emphasis on emotional intelligence and having empathy for your employees. So I feel like that is actually getting better
Mm,
from what I've seen, and which I can tell you a couple of decades ago it was not the case. I
yeah.
also think that leaders are getting better at understanding the benefits of a diverse workforce. And I mean diversity across the board, diversity in skin color, but also in ethnicity, but also and most importantly, diversity in thought. We
Mm,
all have different lived experiences,
yep.
and so
Yep.
we all have different perspectives. Early in my career, I saw a lot of teams where you were like, "Is that you speaking or your boss?" Because it's the same thing. There wasn't a lot of diversity in thought, and I feel like now in rooms that I've been in over the past few years, there's more room for different opinions and different thoughts.
Mm,
And I think that is extremely important for the future of work.
that's what what has caused that parting of the seas, so to speak. Is it just finally people getting enough, or having enough, I should say, of, being stepped on? Or, is it just more of a, we have more cultural accept. I personally feel there's more cultural acceptance, in society nowadays. And I don't know if that plays into it or not, but have you seen anything that sort of leads into a trend as to, like, this is where, on the looking at it from a positive side, where leadership is actually, this is something that's playing into where it's a positive move now.
One, I like you said, I think just in general, we are much more open as a society
Hmm.
to to diversity. But I also think that it takes one person in the right seat to drive change.
Hmm.
So
Gotcha.
I worked with an extremely smart female executive who is CEO now of a very well known organization, and she and I worked together, gosh, quite a few years ago, and she left the organization we were working at, and then a couple of organizations down the road in her trajectory, she called me and said, "Hey, I'm the CEO of a company. Do you want to come over and head up our learning and organizational development department?" And I did, and it was interesting because she brought in a female CHRO, a female CFO, and she brought in a lot of female senior leaders, and interestingly enough, she left that organization to go to another, and all of a sudden, all of those C-suite seats were filled with men after she left. So I
Mm,
think that sometimes if you have the right person, and it doesn't have to be a woman, it just happened to be a woman in this situation. One person in the right seat can bring in certain people that can change minds, and I think that's what's important is advocating for having different voices at the table and different and
yeah, yeah,
ideas
yeah.
off the table.
So, and this is, I'll be careful when I ask this question because it is definitely, it's a gender based question.
Yeah.
Leadership traits. Have you seen more? I don't want to say issues or concerns with a specific gender than the other, or is it again mixed across the board? So I look at this from a viewpoint of, I work in a very male dominated world.
Yeah.
Um, it's only that way because that's just how it is. We need to be better about things with that. But I have seen where at least in my opinion, males can be far more um, Fred Flintstone, barbaric type thing, and sort of like to the point. Whereas I don't know how else are better to explain it. Whereas I feel that women have more of a tactful approach. They understand more of the emotional intelligence side. Where again, we are literally there are reasons why men die way younger than women, and it'll forever be that way because we do stupid things. I'm curious to see if there's actually anything, where you've seen, some sort of a delineation between whether, it's a male or female that seems to have, harder times with, needing more, coaching and leadership, guidance.
Well, first thing I will say is, and there's research out there to back it up, organizations that have women at the highest level tend to perform better. So that tell you something. But in my experience in leadership development and leading workshops and coaching people, women tend to be a little more open to seeing their own flaws and wondering if they can improve.
Okay. I like that. Yeah.
Now, men are too. I see plenty of men who are like, oh, maybe I need to try that. I do find at times, especially if it's a required training, that sometimes men come in with like, I don't know why I have to do this because I've been leading people for 30 years. And I think we need to dig a little bit deeper, JP. And I don't even know that it's so much men and women as it is generation.
Oh, dig away.
So
yes.
and
yes.
You brought up in the intro generations, and this is the way we've always done it. And I've met a lot of people that are, I'm a Gen Xer through and through. I've met a lot of baby boomers who are like, this is the way we've always done it. Why do we have to do it different? Why? This has always been my leadership style. Why should I change my leadership style? And my response is always a couple of things. One, it's not working anymore. Clearly, it's not working anymore because you're having a lot more conflict, a lot quiet quitting, a lot higher turnover. What you've been doing isn't working anymore. But I always tell people whenever they come to my workshops, if you think that you have mastered leadership, you're already failing miserably, because leadership is a practice that continually evolves because the workforce evolves, the world evolves, the culture of our country evolves. So as a leader, you need to consistently and constantly be learning and growing your leadership skills, because if you do it the way you did it 20 years ago, you're not going to be a great leader.
Every time you say something, there's more questions in all these different directions so I have a whole notebook full of things that I'm jotting down, but you are 100% spot on. And I think, in the fire service, we have a, belief that if it doesn't work, try it one more time. If it still doesn't work, it's not going to work. Try something different. And I think sometimes in leadership, people just keep trying. It's like, oh, it's got to do this. It's got to do this. It's got to do this. And there are some that try to lead from more of a dictator, a dictatorial type, style. And it might work in some aspects, but it doesn't really in many that as much as it used to, or as much as people believe that it used to. Right. Back in the days, back in my day, even as much as, as recently as maybe 10, possibly 15 years ago, employers could get away with being, big a-holes because there wasn't really a lot of other jobs or other places for people to go to. Right. And now there's that fine, happy medium where you still need to be firm, but if you're too firm, you're going to push a good employee away. Right. They're going to go somewhere else where they're going to be treated right, or they're going to be, they're going to think that they are at that time, but they're not going to ever come back. And now you're going to have the next 6 to 12 months getting a new employee brought up to speed, and you've lost everything. So there's a ton to that. And I think one of the things that you actually hit on was you tickled quiet quitting a little bit. And that one, I love that phrase. It is something that I, when I was in some of the darker moments where, in my career, I lived in that quiet quitting aspect, in that realm of, I'm going to do just what the job description entails. From a leadership standpoint, what are some signs and, symptoms, so to speak, of, you notice that employee that has maybe slipped into that they're quietly quitting, or they're, maybe some indicators that might help leaders sort of reel that employee back in, or, get the rail cars back on track, proverbially.
Sure. Well, first of all, I think we have to say that when we talk about quiet quitting, what we're really talking about is disengagement.
Mm.
And active disengagement. And that is going to cost your organization dearly. And if you have a disengaged member on your team, everybody else notices too. And you're setting that standard. You're telling them what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But some of the things that you can do, and here's the thing that I tell leaders, I've been preaching this for years. If you're having your one-on-ones with your team members, if you're having conversations with your team members and you're noticing a difference in somebody, even if you just say, you know what, JP, I don't see that same spark in you that I saw
Mm.
months ago. Talk to me. What's going on?
Yeah.
But I also think that as a leader, if I have built that relationship with you, and I know what motivates you, I know what frustrates you, I know your career aspirations, I know what you want to do in life. If I'm helping you reach that,
Mm.
if I'm helping hold the team accountable, if we're celebrating wins as a team, if we're doing all of those things, if I've done my job as a leader, I'm already going to know where you're getting frustrated. As a leader, when I had folks on my team that wanted to grow, and there were times, and they wanted a promotion, and they wanted a raise, and there were times that my bosses said, no, you can't do that.
Mm.
I knew exactly why those folks were out there looking for other jobs. I couldn't do anything about it, but I knew, because I knew them. And so that
Gotcha.
goes
Yeah.
back to building that trust, building that relationship with the folks on your team. The teams that I have seen have the highest disengagement, because someone on my team used to run the engagement survey for the last company that I worked for. None of that information was a surprise. And you showed me a disengaged team, and I can show you a poor leader.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, that's a hell of a statement. I think that's amazing. So before we get into the last question of the episode that everybody gets, what I know, right? You've survived the gauntlet, and we were gentle about it. We had a little pause in the middle, and all that good stuff. How can folks reach out to you, get a hold of you, and if they have questions,
Sure.
comments, or if they if they want to get you, hire you on to get themselves in a good place?
Absolutely. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and it's Dedra Thompson, and then you can find me on LinkedIn. Also, I don't mind giving my email address. It is dedrathompson at getblacklicorice.com. Yes, the name of our consulting firm is Black Licorice. So my partner says that not everybody likes black licorice, and not everybody's going to like us. So,
oh, okay, I like
because
that.
we shoot straight, we don't pull punches, and so, but also, and where you and I met, I am on TikTok, and my TikTok handle is Leadership Real Talk.
I love it. No, I was all hella confused when I saw the email that came across in the intake form. I was like, is that I read it like 5 different times. Like, that says licorice. It does?
Black
Okay.
licorice.
No, I
And
like
you know
it.
what? We stand
what a
out.
great
We're not like,
concept.
ABC Consulting Company. It's
No, I
it's
love it.
black licorice.
Absolutely. And I think that's it's such a smart move. I really, really do. All right. So final question. Everybody gets it. I'm going to change some of the words to it only because it's generally a fire service based question. But an employee walks into your office and they say, "Hey, Dedra, I want to start my way down the leadership path." What is your one raw, unfiltered, and unadulterated piece of advice for that employee?
Have you lost your mind? No, um, no. I would not say that. The very first piece of advice I would give them, and I tell this to people all the time, is to read the book, How Full Is Your Bucket?
Okay.
It's a very simple book. It's a very easy book to read, but it leans into how to care about people. And for me, it's just great life lessons, but especially for a leader, because you start laying that foundation of how to treat
Mm.
and how to connect with people.
Ooh, it's so fun. I have yet to, with 70 some odd episodes, we have never had a repeat of an answer. And I can neither confirm nor deny that any guests actually even listen to the podcast. I have no idea. I think you might be the first one that actually recommended reading a book, so that you're onto something with that. And it's there are a ton of good books out there, and I think I've actually found more enrichment myself in reading books that are not specifically fire service leadership books, because it's just I go off into la la land because they'll try to tie in a fire scene to what they're doing, and now I'm like, oh, I wonder how that fire made, and now I'm completely I'm not even, my eyes are moving across the lines, but I'm not paying any attention. I'm waiting to see where the payoff is as far as how the call came out, not what the the moral behind the story is, so to speak. This is awesome. I thank you so much for joining us today. Your flexibility. I apologize for the other morning. Internet problems and other family stuff came up. So, and even the little pause here in the middle. So I will work on trying to get this edited up over the weekend and try to get it released. So to all of our listeners, all of our viewers and followers, thank you so much for spending time today and tonight in The Passionate Leader with Dedra and myself. We talked about leadership and didn't even talk once about the fire service, except for the stuff that I was rambling on. So it was a good time. If something in today's episode hit, please don't just sit on it. Share it with somebody that you know that could really get some value from it. If you want to be part of a deeper conversation, join us on the Discord page that we have underneath The Passionate Leader. And if you want to really get in some deep, heavy conversations, every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard on TikTok, we do go live with The Passionate Leader at our kitchen table. That's open for everybody. We have a spinning wheel of death where it's whatever random topic comes up, we discuss. And it sometimes I put just purposefully egregious ones on there, like dumb ones, right? I put some ones that kind of cross my mind, some things that people have seen or I've listened or read from other people's platforms, and we kind of just discuss it. And it's no different than what it would be like back at the firehouse, behind the trucks, at the table in the apparatus bay, just the boys and girls shooting the shit and kind of getting just talking, and it goes for at least an hour or so. It's a good time. So you're always welcome to it.
I need to join that.
Yeah, to the
good.
listener, yeah, and the listeners of both pages, obviously tune in every Sunday night. More importantly, though, be the kind of leader that you needed when you first joined either your fire service journey or your leadership journey, or even just your journey into the adult world. And as always, our Passionate Leader creed: lead with passion, serve with humility, and leave no room for bottom feeders. Until we see each other again, everybody, stay safe.